Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden, and we're also going to stick to my home county of Skåne here in the very south of the country. And for this review we're going to have a look at a beer from a brewery that I've never tried anything from before. From what I understand, these guys are very new to the scene and they're also very local to me as well, so that should make for quite an interesting review. For this one then we are going to head out to Dalby, which is only about 10 kilometres or so out to the east of me here in Lund, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from Perfectly Squared Brewing. So this one is called a Cosmic Rite. It comes in at 7.8% ABV, and this one is an Imperial Double IPA, however you want to call it. So yeah, curious to see how this one turns out. I picked this beer mainly because of the name. It sounded a little bit black metal to me, and then when I opened up the page it said it was from Skåne in Skåne County, so I thought, well, why not? Always cool to have a look at the new and very local breweries actually. So yeah, fingers crossed this is a good one, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So yeah, let's see how we get on. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Perfectly Squared Brewing. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Perfectly Squared Brewing then, on to my brewery notes. So Perfectly Squared Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Dalby in Skåne, which is just a little bit out to the east of Lund. And the company was founded back in 2019 by Loa Alkvist and Robert Vedmo, who were long-term home brewers. So Loa is now working full-time in the brewery, and he worked previously in logistics and then for Migrationsverket, and he also has his own graphic design and photography company as well. Robert, on the other hand, comes from a background in sort of like land management or environmental engineering. I'm not sure exactly how to term what he does, but he runs his own company doing this kind of work, and he's also involved in the Hembrygg shop here in Lund as well actually, which is quite interesting. I do recommend you check that out if you find yourself here actually. But apparently these guys were on a trip to Gotland, and they were in Barlingbos Brewery's restaurant, and they saw that the equipment from the now defunct Tredskogens brewery was up for sale. So they decided, having homebrewed for a long time, that they were going to go for it and start their own brewery. But both of these guys are of course based in South Skåne. They managed to find an agricultural property in Dalby, and just to the north of Dalby actually, quite just a little bit outside of the town, but they were ready to begin brewing by March of 2020, and of course COVID-19 hit. But over the last few months they have still managed to get their beers out there and into the local Systembolagets. They've also got some folk ale in one of the local supermarkets out in Dalby as well, from what I understand. But they also do a little bit of distilling, and I'm not sure if they have released anything from that yet, so probably that will come a little bit later. But as of November 2020, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 10 different beers according to Untappd, and like I say, they are a very new brewery and just starting to get things out there. So yeah, that is pretty interesting actually. They've only been brewing for 7 months, I think it would be at the moment. So yeah, definitely have a go at some of their beers if you get the chance. It's always really nice and exciting to support the very small breweries that are just starting up actually. It's always cool to catch a brewery and get a review done on one of their beers in this early stage of development. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Perfectly Squared Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all those different beers that they've done. And yeah, I would recommend that you check out beernews.se. That's where I find a lot of the information on these Swedish breweries for the videos. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork before we open it up. As you can see, it's quite it is quite simple and quite modern, I have to say. I do like the artwork on this one. So yeah, there you can see the Perfectly Squared Brewing symbol. Again, quite simple and quite tasteful. You can see plain black bottle cap on this one. It tells you a little bit on the side here, and it says it's basically Perfectly Square Brewing is a small craft beer brewery and distillery in Skåne. We have passion, we brenner, oh, how would you translate? Yeah, we have a basically we have a passion for forest and earth how do you say, earth product production, if you like, that we turn into exciting drinks. We combine our respect for handcraft and tradition with new influences to give you and combine this with the absolutely best ingredients. So yeah, it's always a little difficult to translate the Swedish when you're kind of doing it off the bat like this. Yeah, it says a Cosmic Rite is brewed with a base of pale ale malt. It's hopped with Citra and Simcoe for a taste and aroma. And then Apollo for a deep bitterness. Apollo's an interesting bittering hop actually, but it's got a nice kind of, I think, snaky, is that like snappy sort of taste with citrus and fresh pine needles in the aroma. The carbonation is natural from bottle fermentation, basically that comes out, and this beer, yeah, there might be some, basically might be some yeast left in the bottom of the bottle, and you can see that if you put the beer up to the light. So yeah, it recommends, yeah, and I think it doesn't really say whether you should leave it, so I guess it's up to us. So yeah, 7.8% ABV, this one, nicely presented. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. So really curious to see what this has in store for us, as I've said. So yeah, nice little bit of smoke on the opening there, and we'll get this guy out and into the glass. So as I always tell you, when it comes to these very small Swedish breweries, you can find some real gems actually. I've had some really interesting beers from like Öland, from Småland, the middle of the breweries that are in the middle of forest in Småland, some random places in Dalarna and Norrbotten and things like that as well. You get some really interesting beers from these very small breweries. I think it's somewhere in the region of 700 breweries in Sweden at the moment, and that number is constantly rising. A lot of that is of course due to the fact that the home brewing culture was so strong as a result of the alcohol laws being so kind of tricky and stuff like that. But these days Systembolaget have kind of loosened the regulations, and so it's a lot easier for small breweries like this one to get their beers into the local stores. And of course there is the monthly Swedish beer release, and this one was, as I say, part of the October 2020 release. So yeah, definitely check out some of the different beers from the very small Swedish breweries. You will find some gems, and do make sure you tell me about them in the comment section below. I always love discovering new breweries actually, because I don't know how many Swedish breweries I would have reviewed now, but there will be quite a few out there that I haven't tried anything from. So yeah, do let me know those in the comments section below. But yeah, as you can see, and as you would kind of expect from a double IPA, this one's poured a lovely kind of rich amber colour actually. This one definitely looks more like a kind of West Coasty type IPA, and it didn't have oats listed in the ingredients, so yeah, it probably will be more of a kind of West Coast IPA. So you can see around the edge of the glass, this one has it does have a very nice kind of thin foamy layer. I would say that that's a kind of creamy colour actually. When the beer poured, it did have about a quarter finger of a frothy cream coloured head, but as you can see it has faded away to just be that very thin foamy layer with the foamy ring around the edge of the glass now. But yeah, very rich amber colour, one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and you can see quite a few bubbles just going up towards the bottom of that head there. But I mean, overall it does look pretty nice actually, and kind of what you would expect from a West Coast IPA, to be honest. So yeah, nothing too surprising about the aroma. Let's have a look at the, nothing too surprising about the appearance I should say. Let's have a little look at the aroma. So yeah. Ooh, that does smell quite nice. One of the things I always love about the beers from the smaller breweries as well is they do just have a little bit of that rawness about them. They're not madly refined and things like that you'll get from some of the big boys. Not that there's anything wrong with that. For me it's two different styles of brewing, but there's just something about this beer, you can tell this is a very small a small batch beer straight away, but I do like that about it. So yeah, straight away with this one, it strikes me as being like very, very old school. I do wonder if it's US-05 that's been used in here. There's just something oddly familiar about this one in terms of that kind of base that the beer has. So straight away with this beer you get that lovely kind of white bready base to it. You can smell that it's got a little bit of a kind of bread crusty sort of thing, and it's those bread crusty notes and the almost like the kind of wetness of that bready character actually that that really makes me think that there's US-05 in here. So yeah. Yeah, I do think, yeah, nice kind of big white bready note to it. See, a little bit of that bread crusty quality. There is a wee bit of there is a little touch of a kind of brown sugary note to this one, a wee bit of a sweet caramel, and a little bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuit sort of thing. But yeah, otherwise it does have it really is mainly just kind of bready, to be honest with you. There's a few kind of grainy elements in there, especially at the back of the nose, but yeah, other than that, there's not too much to report on the malt base. I do wonder, as I say, US-05, there's something oddly familiar about this. The other thing that it could be would be Cephal 05. What number was Cephal again? Yeah, it could be a Cephal yeast, something like that. There is something that's just, you know, striking off memory, that's straight bringing up memories from the aroma of this beer. But yeah, malty side of the beer comes across pretty nicely, but definitely almost like quite raw and quite homebrewed in nature actually. So yeah, interesting stuff. But yeah, in terms of the hoppy side of the beer then, this one for me, you do get a little bit of earthiness out of it. You've got a nice little bit of floral aromaticity, which you're going to get from both Citra and Simcoe. And you're also going to get a bit of that from Apollo as well. Apollo, from what I remember, is quite a bright floral, but almost zesty, grassy leaning hop as well. Apollo is a very interesting bittering hop actually. You don't come across that all that often. But yeah, for me, nice. It really has a very nice kind of green side to the beer. I'd say it leans towards that grassy, zesty side of things, but the floral aromaticity is quite present in this one. And then when it comes to the fruity side of the beer, it does have quite an oily note to it. So, you know, Citra and Simcoe are very interesting hops. Citra, we know, gives you that lovely mango-y character with different complexities. Simcoe is a little bit more passion fruity, and Simcoe is a very good hop to use in New England IPAs with that lovely softness that it has. But when you put it in a more kind of caramelly and West Coasty type malt base, it behaves completely differently, as it does in black IPA bases as well. But yeah, the fruitiness to this one for me, there is a wee bit of that kind of mango-y note coming out of it. You do have a little bit of that kind of, it's got a wee bit of a kind of apricot-y jam sort of thing going on for me, and that'll be one of the complexities I think from Citra. So yeah, a little bit of that kind of, there is a wee bit of that stronger passion fruity note to it. It's got a little bit of an oily mango, and then you've got a bit of a kind of apricot-y jam sort of thing coming out of this one, like I say. There is a wee bit of a kind of citrusy note to it. But yeah, it does almost have a little bit of a kind of medicinal quality in there. You've got one or two little appley perry esters coming out of this beer too. So yeah, take a little bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of that beer before you get stuck into it. I think this one will be quite interesting actually. It strikes me as just being almost very old school and quite homebrewed in nature, if you like. So yeah, that's an interesting point. So yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see how we get on. This one is called a Cosmic Rite. It comes in at 7.8% ABV, an Imperial Double IPA, however you want to call it, from Perfectly Square Brewing in Dalby, just out to the east of me here in Lund. So yeah, let's get stuck in. Slàinte, Skåne. Cool to have these guys on the channel for the first time. Oh yeah, this one is, it does have that kind of nice, like really small batch homebrewed kind of thing to it. I like having beers like this every so often. This is pretty, it's quite a malty leaning IPA as well, which is, you know, at 7.8% you would kind of expect that, to be honest, but yeah. So yeah, where to start with this one? It's kind of interesting. So straight away with this beer you get a nice little bit of a kind of toasty, grainy quality. That does blanket the middle of the palate for me. You can feel more of that coming out the further you go into the aftertaste with the beer. But yeah, on top of that you start to get a nice kind of bready note to it. You do get that kind of brown bready note, and I think the breadiness kind of sweetens up a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste. But yeah, on the back third of your palate you can feel there's a little bit more graininess to it from my mind, and you can feel the back third of your palate just drying out a little bit the further that you go into the aftertaste. So as you move further forward and that back third of your tongue, you can feel that breadiness. It just kind of thins out a little bit as you reach the middle third of your palate, and then on top of it, in the middle third of your palate, that's when you start to get some of the that's when you start to get a little bit of that kind of sweet kind of caramelly note out of the beer. So on top of the bready note there, you've got a nice kind of oily sort of circle, if you like, and in the very centre of your palate you get the sweet caramel, and as you move further out from the centre of your palate it will become more kind of biscuity and McVitie's digestive like. So yeah, this one to me, it's actually a very kind of straight shooting beer in a lot of ways. As I say, I like having things like this every so often. This definitely has a little bit of the rawness about it. Yeah, this beer definitely has just a wee bit of rawness to it, which is really quite interesting. So yeah, it's the malty side of this one just kind of it sort of just strikes me quite well. It's quite a great. I would say this is quite a grainy leaning double IPA. It does have a bit of breadiness to it, as I say, and it's got a wee bit of sweetness too, and you get a little bit of the booziness there in the kind of malty characteristics as well, but it does gradually get more and more grainy the further that you go into the aftertaste, but it really does retain that sort of raw, quite, I don't know if raw is the right word, rustic maybe. It does have a little bit of that rustic kind of quality to it, which is quite interesting with the grainy things. There's maybe one or two elements of almost farmhousey character to the grains. You maybe get one or two kind of woody sort of flavours coming out of this beer just underneath. So yeah, quite interesting in that regard too. But let's go on to the hoppy side of things then. I think we've covered the malt base as much as we really need to. So yeah, for me, the hoppy side of this beer, in the back corners of the palate you get a nice little bit of earthiness out of it. As you move further forward you can feel the earthiness gradually gives way and you start to get more of a kind of piney resinous quality to it. There's a nice little bit of floral aromaticity to this one, but I do get piney notes out of it. That'll be the Apollo, I think, that's giving you that. I don't remember Apollo being so kind of piney and resinous though. I always remembered it being a little bit more grassy and zesty, but in fairness, around the front curve of the tongue, that's what you get. You do get quite a little bit of a zestiness out of this beer, but you've got those nice kind of dank piney resin notes sitting in the sort of sides of the palate, if you like. But yeah, behind that front curve of your palate, that's where you get the nice oily bubble, where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, on that fruity side of thing, I think the Simcoe comes out in this one really nice. So you start to get the very bright flavours from the Simcoe in this beer. But yeah, if you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, like I say, where the juicy esters come out, you do get a wee bit of a kind of stronger passion fruity, almost slightly grapefruity note there, and that I think the Citra is going to give you the stronger grapefruity note, but then the Simcoe is going to give you that slightly lighter passion fruit note. And yeah, as you move further forward from the beer, the passion fruity note gets a little bit more oily. There's kind of a wee bit of an oily, more mangoey, like a brighter mangoey note. Then as you reach the kind of front edge of the tongue, you do start to get some quite strong citrusy character out of this beer. You get a little bit of that kind of citrusy taste. It's almost a little bit kind of lemony almost, which is quite interesting. So yeah, there is a wee bit of a kind of, it's got a really kind of almost dryness on the very front tip of the palate as well from that kind of note. But yeah, you can feel a little bit of a kind of lemony, zesty kind of note mixing in with the grassy qualities of this beer. So yeah, it's interesting how this one goes together actually. But yeah, the aroma of this one, the flavour of this beer is quite interesting for me. It really has that nice kind of homebrewed vibe to it, and as I say, you do enjoy coming back and trying these kind of beers after a while, but I think it is pretty It's pretty nice, I have to say. I do enjoy these kind of things. I'd be curious to try a few of their other beers. I can't remember what styles the other ones were, but I'd be curious to try one of their dark beers and see what that's like. So I'll need to check what they have in Systembolaget and see. Maybe I can take a cycle out to Dalby once the weather gets a little bit better and once COVID-19 buggers off. Maybe I can get a few more of their beers to review for you here on the channel. But yeah, this is definitely, it really strikes me as one of these nice, kind of almost, I guess, rusticy, raw, however you want to term it, a kind of homebrewedy kind of beer. This, I really like how that, I really like reviewing things like this every so often. So yeah, this one's a nice change of pace compared to what we've been reviewing recently. Stylistically, I would definitely say that this is more of a West Coast IPA rather than anything else. The oily malt base, the bitter, the little bit more bitterness, and then the oily fruits as well. So on that note, I think we should go to the mouthfeel. So I would describe this beer as being at the kind of top end of mid-body. The carbonation's quite smooth. The mouthfeel overall is kind of oily, to be honest, and you do want that from a more West Coast IPA. You want a bit of an oily character to it. So yeah, a little bit of a nice kind of oily character to it, like I was saying. In terms of bitterness, I think this one, it's not madly high. I think it's probably about 50 or 60 IBUs at a push. I'd say about 50 for this one, to be honest. The malt base, like I say, it's got a nice little bit of smoothness to it from the bready notes. You do get a little bit of a graininess and almost a very slight toastiness out of it as well, but some nice oily sweetness to it. And then you've also got the juicy kind of fruity notes, which are, I would say the fruits in this beer are a little bit more oily rather than anything else. So yeah, that's definitely an interesting point to make about this one. This is definitely more of a West Coasty IPA, and it definitely has that kind of big, that sort of homebrewed type vibe to it, and I like that about these beers from the very small breweries. They don't come across as being madly refined in the way that that some of the ones from the big boys will. But yeah, it's an interesting sort of change of pace to do a review like this. So yeah, I have to say I've enjoyed reviewing this one. This is quite an interesting beer, and I'm curious, as I say, to see what else these guys have available. So I'll keep an eye out for them and see what we can do. But let's leave it at that for this one for the moment. This one was a Cosmic Rite coming in at 7.8% ABV. I guess we could say a West Coast double IPA in this case, but yeah, one of the lower alcohol double IPAs that you're going to come across. But yeah, cool to have another Skånsk beer for you here on the channel, and yeah, cool to review another one that is so local to me actually. So yeah, let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Perfectly Square Brewing as well. I do look forward to seeing how these guys evolve over the next little while, and I do wish them luck, especially in these kind of times, because COVID-19 of course is having a big effect on quite a few businesses and things. But they started just as it started, so they seem to still be doing all right, so fingers crossed that continues. But yeah, thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you guys very soon. Slange, Skål, cheers. Make sure you have a look at Perfectly Square Brewing in Dalby here in Skåne. Cheers.